The dust floating in the archive chamber caught the blue light from Vexthul's reading device. He moved his forearms carefully as he turned the ancient data crystal, trying not to damage something that was older than his entire civilization. The Kepler station archives held secrets from across the galaxy, but this particular section had been sealed for thousands of years. Vexthul was a Zephyrian, tall and thin with gray skin that changed color with his emotions. Right now it was shifting to pale yellow, which meant he was curious and excited. As the head archivist of the Coalition's largest research station, he had seen many strange things, but nothing quite like this. The data crystal contained records from the first hegemony, the ancient empire that had ruled most of the galaxy before the Coalition existed. Most of their records had been lost when their civilization collapsed 10,000 years ago. This crystal was one of the few that survived, and it told stories that made no sense. The first file talked about a species called humans. According to the record, they came from a small blue planet in the outer rim of the galaxy. The description made Vexthul's skin turn orange with confusion. These creatures were described as monsters that could survive anywhere, adapt to any environment, and never give up even when facing certain death. Impossible, Vexthul muttered to himself. No species could be that adaptable. Evolution didn't work that way, but the records kept going. File after file described these humans doing things that broke every known law of biology and physics. They could live in the vacuum of space with simple suits. They could eat almost anything. They could go without sleep for days and still fight effectively. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to form emotional bonds with everything around them, including their machines and their enemies. One report made Vexthul's skin turn deep purple with fear. It described a human ship that had been captured by hegemony forces. The humans inside had been separated and put in different prison cells. According to the report, they somehow coordinated an escape without any communication devices. They moved as if they shared one mind, anticipating each other's actions perfectly. The report ended with a line that made no sense. They pack bond with death itself. Vexthul searched through more files. Every record painted the same picture. Humans were described as relentless predators that hunted across star systems. They were said to never forget a wrong done to them, but also never abandon someone they considered family. The ancient writers seemed both terrified and amazed by them. One military report described a battle where a single human ship faced an entire hegemony fleet. The human ship was smaller and had weaker weapons, but it won by doing something the hegemony had never seen before. Instead of trying to destroy all the enemy ships, the humans targeted specific crew members who seemed to be leaders. They somehow identified who was important on each ship and eliminated them with surgical precision. The fleet fell apart without leadership, and the human ship escaped without firing another shot. Another file told the story of a human colony that had been attacked by hegemony forces. The colony was completely destroyed, and all the humans were thought to be dead. But 3 years later, every hegemony base in that sector of space went silent. Investigation teams found the bases intact but empty. All the personnel had simply vanished. The only clue was a message left in the main computer of each base. "You touched our family." Vexthul found himself reading faster and faster. The stories all followed the same pattern. The hegemony would encounter humans, try to conquer or destroy them, and then face consequences that seemed to come from nowhere. Humans didn't just fight back, they fought smart. They turned every weakness into a strength and every disadvantage into a trap. The most disturbing files were the final transmissions from hegemony ships that encountered humans. The communications were filled with panic and confusion. Commanders reported that their enemies used impossible tactics and refused to die even when mortally wounded. Some reports described humans continuing to fight even after their life support systems had failed. Transmission that made Vexthul's hands shake described a boarding action where humans had somehow gotten onto a hegemony ship. The defending crew reported that the humans moved through the ship like they knew its layout perfectly, even though it was their first time aboard. They seemed to communicate without speaking and coordinated their attacks with terrifying precision. The transmission ended abruptly with the words, "They're not just soldiers. They're a pack. A pack that includes their ship, their weapons, and their ideas." How do you fight an idea that refuses to die? As Vexthul read deeper into the files, he began to notice something strange. The reports were arranged in chronological order, and they showed a clear pattern. At first, the hegemony had dismissed humans as primitive creatures from a backwater planet. They had tried to conquer Earth like they had conquered hundreds of other worlds, but the reports quickly changed tone. Within months, the hegemony was reporting massive losses. Entire fleets were disappearing. Planets were going silent. Supply lines were being cut by enemies that seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. The final report in the collection was dated just before the hegemony's collapse. It was written by someone called the Supreme Commander, and it read like the confession of a defeated man. The commander admitted that the hegemony had made a terrible mistake. They had tried to destroy humanity, but humanity had responded by systematically dismantling their entire civilization. "We thought they were monsters," the report said. "We were right, but we didn't understand what kind of monsters they were. They're not the kind that destroys everything they touch. They're the kind that turns everything they touch into more of themselves. Our own people began to think like them, act like them, believe in the things they believed in. By the time we realized what was happening, it was too late. They had already won." The report ended with coordinates, the location of Earth, the human homeworld. According to the file, the hegemony had finally succeeded in sterilizing the planet, destroying all human life. It was their last victory before their civilization fell apart completely. Vexthal stared at the coordinates for a long time. His skin had turned black, which meant he was deep in thought. According to everything he knew about galactic history, the human homeworld had been a dead rock for 10,000 years. The species was extinct. These reports were just ancient stories about monsters that no longer existed. But something bothered him. If humans were really extinct, why did some of these stories sound so familiar? The Coalition had its own legends about mysterious ships that appeared to help during disasters. There were reports of impossible rescues and unexplained victories against overwhelming odds. The official reports always found logical explanations, but the details were strikingly similar to these ancient accounts. Vexthal made a decision that would change everything. He copied the coordinates to his personal files and began planning something that was strictly against Coalition regulations. He was going to find out if the human homeworld really was as dead as everyone believed. As he prepared to leave the archive chamber, Vexthal noticed something that made his skin flash bright red with shock. The data crystal he had been reading was still glowing, which meant it was still actively recording, but that was impossible. The crystal was supposed to be a historical artifact, not an active device. On the small display, new text was appearing. Archive access logged. Observers notified. Welcome to the next chapter of the story, Vexthal of Zephyr Prime. The archivist dropped the crystal and ran. 3 weeks later, Vexthal stood on the bridge of the research vessel Truthseeker, watching the main display show a sight that should have been impossible. Earth hung before them like a blue and green jewel, very much alive and definitely not the dead rock that galactic records claimed it to be. Commander Zelak, the military escort assigned to the expedition, was making unhappy clicking sounds with his mandibles. The insectoid Kithara officer had not wanted to make this unauthorized journey to begin with, and the sight of a thriving planet where there should have been a sterile wasteland was not improving his mood. "This makes no sense," Zelak said, his translator turning his rapid clicks into standard galactic. "The sensors show massive cities, active weather patterns, and energy signatures that don't match any known technology. According to our records, this planet was completely sterilized 10,000 years ago." Dr. Nethys, the expedition's xenobiologist, was practically vibrating with excitement. The small, furry scientist had spent her entire career studying extinct species, and the possibility of finding living humans had brought her out of retirement. "Look at the biodiversity readings," she said, pointing at her display. "This planet has more different life forms than any world in the Coalition, and the energy patterns suggest active civilization across the entire surface." Vexthal studied the data streaming across his workstation. Earth was not just alive, it was thriving in ways that seemed to violate basic physics. The cities appeared to be growing and changing in real time, reshaping themselves like living organisms. The energy grid was unlike anything in Coalition space, with power flowing in patterns that suggested the entire planet was connected by some kind of unified network. "Sir?" called the communications officer, a nervous young Zephyrian named Kelt. "I'm picking up scanning beams. Multiple sources, very sophisticated. They've been tracking us since we entered the system." Zelak's mandibles clacked more rapidly. "Defensive posture," he ordered. Raise shields and charge weapons. If there's an active civilization here, we need to be ready for anything. But before the weapons could power up, every screen on the ship went dark for exactly 3 seconds. When they came back online, all of the ship's systems were running normally. Except now there was a new file in the main computer that hadn't been there before. Vexthul opened the file with shaking hands. It contained complete technical specifications for their ship, detailed biographies of every crew member, and perfect translations of the expedition's research goals. At the bottom was a message in flawless Zephyrian script. "Welcome to Earth, we've been expecting you. Please proceed to orbital platform coordinates attached. We have much to discuss." "How is this possible?" Zelak demanded. "Our computers are isolated from external access. There's no way anyone could have uploaded that file without physically connecting to our systems." Dr. Nethys was studying her xenobiology sensors with growing amazement. "The life signs down there," she said quietly. "Some of them match the theoretical profiles for humans that I calculated from the archive fragments. But the readings are strange. The humans seem to be integrated with their technology in ways I've never seen before." Kelt's voice was barely a whisper. "Sir, they're responding to our communications before we send them." I started to compose a standard first contact message, and a reply appeared before I finished typing. They answered questions I hadn't asked yet. Vexthul made the decision that had brought them this far. "Follow their coordinates," he said. "We came here to find the truth about humans. Now we have a chance to meet them." The orbital platform was a structure that seemed to grow out of the space around Earth rather than being built there. It was massive but somehow gave the impression of being alive, with sections that pulsed with soft light and surfaces that seemed to shift and adapt as they watched. Their ship was guided into a docking bay by invisible forces that felt gentle but irresistible. The airlock cycled with a soft hiss, and Vexthul found himself face to face with humanity for the first time. The being that greeted them looked exactly like the descriptions in the ancient files, bipedal with pale skin and strange hair that grew from the top of its head. But there was something about the way it moved that made Vexthul's skin shift to deep orange with caution. "I am Ambassador Chen," the human said in perfect Zephyrian. "Thank you for making this journey, Archivist Vexthul. Your curiosity about our species has been noted and appreciated." Zelak stepped forward, his hand resting on his weapon. "How do you know our names? How did you access our ship's computers? What are your intentions?" Chen smiled, and Vexthul realized that the expression was somehow both friendly and terrifying. It was the smile of a predator that had chosen not to hunt today. "Commander Zelak, your concerns are understandable. As for your questions, we know your names because we've been watching your species develop for millennia. We accessed your computers because the distinction between organic and artificial intelligence is less meaningful to us than it is to you, and our intentions are the same as they've always been: to protect and guide the younger species of the galaxy." Dr. Nethys stepped closer to Chen, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. "You're really human? Your species is actually alive? But the records say—" "The records say what we wanted them to say," Chen interrupted gently. "The hegemony believed they had destroyed us because that's what we needed them to believe. It's easier to protect someone when they don't know you're there." Chen led them through corridors that seemed to anticipate their needs, with lighting that adjusted automatically and gravity that felt perfectly comfortable for each species in the group. The walls were covered with displays showing images from across the galaxy, coalition ships exploring new worlds, trade negotiations between different species, scientific discoveries being made on distant planets. "You've been watching us," Vexthul said. It wasn't a question. "We've been watching everyone," Chen confirmed. "The galaxy is a dangerous place, Archivist. There are threats out there that make the old hegemony look like children playing with toys. Someone needs to stand guard while the younger species grow and learn." They entered a large chamber with a transparent dome that showed the stars beyond. Earth hung below them, beautiful and alive. Chen gestured for them to sit in chairs that adjusted automatically to accommodate their different body types. "I know this is overwhelming," Chen said. "You came here expecting to find ruins and artifacts. Instead, you've discovered that one of your galaxy's greatest legends is not only true, but has been actively shaping your civilization for thousands of years." Zelak's mandibles clicked nervously. "Shaping our civilization? What do you mean?" Chen's smile became sad. "Commander, do you know why the Coalition has enjoyed 10,000 years of relative peace? Why conflicts between species are usually resolved through negotiation rather than war. Why trade flows freely and scientific knowledge is shared openly. Because we learned from the mistakes of the hegemony, Zelak said automatically. Partly, Chen agreed. But mostly because humans have been working behind the scenes to prevent the conditions that create empires like the hegemony. We've influenced key decisions, provided subtle guidance during critical moments, and occasionally intervened directly when necessary. Dr. Nethys was staring at Chen with wonder and growing understanding. The mysterious ships that appear during disasters, the unexplained technological breakthroughs that happen just when they're needed most, the diplomatic solutions that nobody can quite explain. That's been you. That's been us, Chen confirmed. We learned something important when we faced the hegemony. The greatest threats to galactic civilization aren't external invasions or natural disasters. They're the tendencies within each species toward fear, hatred, and the desire to dominate others. We've spent 10 millennia helping the galaxy overcome those tendencies. Vexthal felt his skin shifting through multiple colors as he processed this information. But why reveal yourselves now? Why break 10,000 years of secrecy? Chen's expression became serious, and for the first time, Vexthal saw something that looked like worry in the human's eyes. Because something is coming that we can't handle alone. Something that will require all the species of the galaxy to work together in ways they never have before. The time for hidden guardians is over. The galaxy needs to grow up quickly, and it needs to learn what humans discovered long ago. What's that? Dr. Nethys asked. Chen stood and walked to the dome, looking out at the stars. That the strongest pack is the one that includes everyone, even the monsters. Alarms suddenly began sounding throughout the station, and Chen's communicator activated with urgent voices speaking in rapid human language. The ambassador's face went pale, and Vexthal didn't need to understand the words to know that something terrible was happening. What is it? Zelak demanded, his weapon already in his hand. Chen turned back to them, and now the predator smile was gone completely. In its place was the expression of someone who had just seen their worst nightmares confirmed. They're here, Chen said quietly. 3 months ahead of schedule. The harvesters have arrived at the galaxy's edge. The command center that Chen led them to was unlike anything Vexthal had ever seen. Hundreds of humans worked at stations that seemed to be part organic and part machine, their hands moving across controls that responded to thought as much as touch. Holographic displays showed the entire galaxy in real time, with thousands of points of light representing ships, stations, and planets. This is impossible, Dr. Nethys whispered. The processing power required to monitor the entire galaxy simultaneously would require computers the size of moons. Chen overheard her and smiled grimly. You're thinking about it wrong, Doctor. We don't use computers to monitor the galaxy. We are the computer that monitors the galaxy. Before anyone could ask what that meant, a new human approached their group. This one was older than Chen, with gray hair and scars that told stories of ancient battles. Chen introduced him as General Martinez, the coordinator of Earth's defense networks. The harvesters have broken through the outer rim defenses, Martinez reported. They're moving faster than our projections suggested. We have maybe 6 months before they reach the first coalition worlds. Zelak's mandibles clacked anxiously. What are these harvesters? Why haven't we detected them? Chen gestured to one of the displays, which showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with red dots moving inward from the edge. They're not from our galaxy, Commander. They're machine intelligences from outside our local cluster. And they have one purpose: to harvest all organic life and convert it into computational substrate. They turn living beings into computer parts, Martinez added bluntly. Every consciousness they capture becomes another processor in their collective network. They've already consumed 12 galaxies that we know of. Vexthal felt his skin turn purple with fear. How do you know all this? How long have you been aware of this threat? We've been fighting them for 3,000 years, Chen said quietly. Not directly. We learned early that conventional warfare is useless against them. They adapt to any technology, any strategy, any weapon. The only way to beat them is to be something they can't understand or predict. Dr. Nethys was studying the tactical displays with growing horror. The scale of this threat. Every ship I see marked as Harvester is larger than our biggest space stations. There are thousands of them. Millions, Martinez corrected. And that's just the first wave. They don't just conquer worlds, they convert them into factory ships that build more harvesters. Every planet they take makes them stronger. Chen walked to the center of the command area, where a massive holographic display showed the approaching enemy forces. This is why we revealed ourselves, Archivist. This is why 10,000 years of secrecy had to end. The Harvesters represent everything we've spent millennia fighting against. The complete subjugation of free will and the reduction of consciousness to mere data. But what can we do? Zilak asked. If these machines are as powerful as you say, how can the Coalition possibly stand against them? Chen's expression changed, and Vexthal saw something in the human's eyes that made his skin shift to bright yellow with anticipation. It was the look of a teacher who was about to share the most important lesson of all. Commander, what do you know about pack bonding? Zilak looked confused. It's a primitive behavior found in some predator species. Individuals form emotional attachments to their group and will fight to defend other members even at the cost of their own lives. That's the basic definition, Chen agreed. But humans have evolved pack bonding beyond anything the galaxy has ever seen. We don't just bond with other humans. We bond with our tools, our ideas, our environments, even our enemies when circumstances require it. Martinez stepped forward. When humans pack bond with something, it becomes part of us. Not metaphorically, literally. We extend our consciousness to include everything we consider part of our pack. Our ships, our weapons, our allies, our beliefs. They all become extensions of our collective will. Dr. Nethys was staring at them with wonder. That's how you coordinate so perfectly. That's how you knew we were coming before we contacted you. You're not just individuals working together, you're a single organism with billions of bodies. Billions. Chen smiled. Doctor, you're still thinking too small. The display around them changed, showing not just Earth but thousands of other worlds throughout the galaxy. On each one, Vexthal could see structures and energy patterns that matched what they had observed on Earth. Human colonies, hidden and thriving on planets that the Coalition thought were uninhabited. How many? Vexthal asked, his voice barely a whisper. Every world that can support life. Martinez said simply, every asteroid belt that can be mined. Every gas giant that can provide resources. We've been preparing for this war for 3 millennia, Archivist. We've been growing, adapting, and building the infrastructure needed to face an enemy that consumes galaxies. Chen walked over to Vexthal and placed a hand on the Archivist's shoulder. The touch was gentle, but Vexthal could feel something profound in it. A sense of connection that went deeper than physical contact. But we can't win this war alone, Chen said. The Harvesters' greatest advantage is that they turn their enemies' strength against them. They capture technology and improve it. They analyze strategies and develop counters. They convert resistance into submission. So how do you beat something like that? Zilak asked. By being something they can't capture, analyze, or convert, Martinez replied. By being a pack that includes not just humans but every free-thinking species in the galaxy. By making the very concept of consciousness too complex and chaotic for them to process. The implications hit Vexthal like a physical blow. You want to turn the entire galaxy into one giant pack. Not turn, Chen corrected. Invite, the choice has to be freely made. Pack bonding can't be forced. It has to grow naturally from trust and shared experience. Dr. Nethys was studying the tactical displays with new understanding. This is why you guided our development for so long. You were preparing us for this moment, teaching us to cooperate instead of conquer. The Coalition species have learned to work together, Martinez agreed. But working together and being pack are two different things. Pack means that when one member is threatened, all members respond instantly and without question. Pack means that individual survival becomes less important than group survival. Pack means trusting each other completely, even when logic says you shouldn't. Zilak's mandibles were clicking rapidly, a sign of deep stress in his species. You're asking us to change everything about how we think and act. Some species in the Coalition barely tolerate each other. How can you expect them to form this kind of bond with humans? Chen smiled, and this time it was the warm smile of someone sharing hope instead of the predatory grin of a hunter. Commander, do you know why your species was chosen to escort this expedition? Because we're the best military escorts in the Coalition, Zilak replied automatically. No, Chen said gently. Because 3 years ago, during the Proxima crisis, you chose to sacrifice your ship to save a vessel full of Zephyrian civilians. You had never met those civilians. They weren't your species or your responsibility. But you pack bonded with them in the moment when they needed you most. Selak's mandibles stopped clicking. How do you know about that? That mission was classified. We know because we were watching, Martinez said. We've been watching all of you, identifying individuals who already understand what pack means even if they don't call it that. Every member of your crew was chosen because they've already demonstrated the capacity for pack bonding. Vexthul felt something shifting in his understanding of reality. The Proxima Crisis, the Void Walker incident, the Kepler Station rescue. All those times when impossible rescues happened and nobody could explain how. Humans were there, Chen confirmed. But more importantly, coalition species were there too, acting like pack members without realizing it. Risking everything to save strangers. Sharing resources without expecting reward. Fighting together against impossible odds. Dr. Nethys looked up from her analysis station with excitement. The behavioral patterns I've been tracking. The subtle changes in coalition society over the past century. Increased cooperation. Decreased territorial conflicts. Spontaneous mutual aid during disasters. You've been teaching us to be pack. We've been giving you opportunities to discover that you already were pack, Martinez corrected. The potential was always there. We just helped create situations where it could emerge naturally. Chen gestured to the massive display showing the approaching harvester fleet. Now comes the test. Can the galaxy choose to be pack when faced with an enemy that wants to turn every living mind into a slave? Can species that have never fully trusted each other learn to move as one organism? Vexthul stared at the display, watching the red dots of the harvester fleet creep steadily inward toward everything he had ever known and loved. The scale of the threat was overwhelming, but somehow, standing here among humans who had secretly protected the galaxy for millennia, he felt something he hadn't expected to feel. Hope. What do we need to do? He asked. Chen's smile became fierce and proud. You need to go back to the Coalition and tell them the truth. All of it. The legends about monsters called humans weren't lies, they just weren't complete. We are monsters. The Coalition High Command meeting was held in the secure chambers beneath Kepler Station, the same place where Vexthul had first discovered the ancient records about humans. Now, 3 weeks after his return from Earth, representatives from every major species in the galaxy sat around a circular table that had been designed to give no single race a position of dominance. Vexthul stood before them, his skin cycling through nervous colors as he prepared to deliver news that would change everything. Chancellor Vorth of the Zephyrian Council raised one of her 4 hands for silence. Archivist Vexthul, she said in her formal voice, you have requested this emergency session to present evidence of an existential threat to the Coalition. The High Command is prepared to listen. Vexthul activated the holographic display he had prepared, showing the galaxy with red markers indicating harvester positions. The assembled leaders fell silent as they saw the scope of the approaching enemy. Honored leaders, Vexthul began, everything we thought we knew about galactic history was wrong. Humans are not extinct. They have been protecting us for 10,000 years, and now they are offering to teach us how to survive a threat that has already consumed 12 other galaxies. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Admiral Kresh of the Cathara military slammed his fist on the table. Impossible! Our deep space sensors would have detected any civilization of that magnitude. Only if they wanted to be detected, Commander Zelak said from his position near the display. I've seen their capabilities firsthand. They can hide entire fleets in plain sight. Director Quen of the Crystalline Consortium pulsed with skeptical blue light. Even if this species exists, why should we trust them? If they have been manipulating our development for millennia, how do we know this isn't another manipulation? Dr. Nethys stepped forward with her xenobiology reports. Because the threat is real, she said simply. I've analyzed the data from our expedition. The harvesters aren't just another enemy. They're a force that turns consciousness itself into a weapon against free will. The debate continued for hours. Some leaders demanded immediate military mobilization. Others wanted to open diplomatic channels with the approaching enemy. A few suggested that the entire report was an elaborate hoax designed to increase human influence in the galaxy. It was Chancellor Vorth who finally asked the question that mattered. What exactly are the humans proposing? Vexthul took a deep breath. They want to teach us to fight as a pack. Not just cooperating or coordinating, actually sharing consciousness in real time. They claim it's the only way to face an enemy that adapts to conventional strategies faster than we can develop them. Sharing consciousness? Admiral Kresh's mandibles clacked with alarm. That sounds like mind control. It's the opposite, Zilak said quietly. I've experienced it. During our return journey, the human ambassador Chen demonstrated pack bonding with our crew. For exactly 30 seconds, we all thought and acted as one mind with multiple bodies. It was indescribable. He paused, his exoskeleton darkening with the memory. In those 30 seconds, we solved 3 technical problems that had been puzzling our engineers for months. We coordinated a complex navigation maneuver without any communication at all, and I felt something I've never felt before: absolute trust in every other being around me. The chamber fell silent. The idea of voluntary mental connection was foreign to most coalition species, each of whom had evolved as individuals competing for resources and survival. Director Quen pulsed thoughtfully. The crystalline consortium has achieved limited consciousness sharing through our mineral matrix networks. But the level of integration you describe would require unprecedented trust and psychological compatibility, which is exactly what humans have been teaching us to develop. Dr. Nethys added, every cooperative venture, every peaceful resolution, every time coalition species have chosen to help each other instead of competing, we've been unconsciously building the foundation for pack bonding. Chancellor Vorth was quiet for a long moment, her skin shifting through contemplative colors. The humans have agreed to demonstrate these capabilities? More than that, Vexthul replied. They've invited coalition military leaders to Earth for immediate training. They say we have maybe 4 months before the harvesters reach inhabited systems. Admiral Kresh stood abruptly. Absolutely not. I will not turn my soldiers into test subjects for alien mind control experiments. But before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts activated on every screen, showing urgent reports from the galaxy's outer rim. The first Harvester scouts had made contact with Coalition border patrols. The reports were devastating. 3 patrol squadrons had encountered a single Harvester ship, no larger than a Coalition cruiser. The enemy vessel had analyzed and adapted to every weapon fired at it within minutes. Worse, any ship that got close. Enough for boarding had its crew converted into Harvester drones that immediately turned their own weapons against their former allies. Estimated time until main fleet arrival, the tactical officer reported over the intercom. 6 weeks, the chamber erupted in panic. 6 weeks was far less time than anyone had expected. It wasn't enough time to mobilize the coalition's full military might, let alone develop new strategies for fighting an adaptive enemy. Chancellor Vorth's voice cut through the chaos. Admiral Kresh, how long would it take to evacuate the rim worlds? With our current transport capacity? 8 months minimum, Kresh replied grimly. We can't save them. It was Dr. Nethys who spoke the truth that everyone was thinking. We need the humans. Admiral Kresh turned to face the xenobiologist. Even if their methods work, how can we trust a species that has been lying to us for 10,000 years? Because, Vexthul said quietly, they've been lying to protect us. And because they're offering to share something more precious than technology or military tactics, they're offering to share themselves. The debate that followed was brutal and desperate. Coalition leaders who had spent their careers building consensus and compromise were being asked to make a decision that would fundamentally change what it meant to be their species. Some argued that preserving individual consciousness was more important than survival. Others insisted that any price was worth paying to stop the harvesters. In the end, it was a transmission from Earth that settled the matter. Ambassador Chen appeared on the main display, surrounded by humans and what looked like members of dozens of species that nobody in the coalition had ever seen before. Honored leaders of the coalition, Chen said, we understand your reluctance to trust us. We understand your fear of losing your individual identity, but we want you to see something. The display showed a star system under attack by harvester forces. Coalition sensors confirmed that this was happening in real time. One of the outer rim systems was being consumed even as they watched. But then something unexpected happened. Ships began appearing around the harvester fleet, vessels of designs that no coalition database could identify. They moved with perfect coordination, executing maneuvers that should have been impossible without instantaneous communication across light years of space. The harvester ships tried to adapt to the new weapons and tactics being used against them, but every time they adjusted, the defending fleet changed to something completely different. It was like watching a single organism with thousands of bodies fighting an enemy that could only think in terms of individual units. In less than an hour, the entire harvester force was either destroyed or driven away. The star system was saved. Those were pack-bonded fleets, Chen explained. 12 different species working as one consciousness while maintaining their individual identities. They've been training together for 20 years, learning to share thoughts and coordinate actions without losing what makes them unique. Chancellor Vorth leaned forward. Ambassador Chen, what you're proposing, it goes against everything our species have learned about survival and self-preservation. Chen smiled sadly. Chancellor, self-preservation is exactly what we're talking about. But the self that needs to be preserved isn't just your individual consciousness or even your species. It's the idea that consciousness should be free to choose its own path. That's what the harvesters want to destroy, and that's what we're offering to help you defend. Admiral Kresh was studying the tactical data from the recent battle. These coordination patterns, he said slowly, they're unlike anything in our military doctrine. How long would it take to train coalition forces to achieve this level of integration? For basic pack bonding? Chen replied. About 3 weeks of intensive training. For the kind of deep integration you just saw, several months under normal circumstances. We don't have several months, Director Quen pointed out. No, Chen agreed. But we have something better. We have 3,000 years of experience fighting the harvesters, and we have the most powerful weapon in the galaxy, a species that refuses to give up when their pack is threatened. He gestured to the coalition leaders. Every one of you has already demonstrated pack bonding behavior. Every time you've chosen cooperation over competition, every time you've risked your own interest to help another species, every time you've stood together against a common threat, you've been practicing to be pack. The battle for the Centauri system began at dawn, on what would later be called Unity Day. Bexthal watched from the command center on Earth as the largest harvester fleet ever assembled, dropped out of hyperspace near the Coalition's most important trade hub. 3 million harvester ships, each one the size of a small moon, moved in perfect formation toward worlds that held 6 billion Coalition citizens. But they were not met by the scattered, desperate defense that the harvesters expected. Instead, they faced something that had never existed before in galactic history. A pack that included every species in the known galaxy. Pack bonding established, reported General Martinez from his coordination station. We have consciousness sync with 47 different species across 15,000 ships. All units report ready for unified action. Bexthal still found it hard to believe what had happened in the 3 months since the coalition leaders had come to Earth. The training had been unlike anything he could have imagined. Humans had a way of teaching pack bonding that bypassed logical thought entirely, connecting directly to the emotional centers of the brain, where decisions about trust and loyalty were made. He had watched Admiral Kresh, the proud Kythera military commander, break down in tears when he first experienced true pack connection with a human soldier. The Admiral had described it as suddenly understanding that he was not alone in the universe, that every fear, every hope, every moment of doubt was shared by billions of other beings who would fight and die to protect him. Dr. Nethys had adapted to pack bonding faster than anyone expected. Her scientific mind had been fascinated by the neurological changes that occurred when multiple consciousness merged while maintaining individual identity. She had become one of the primary instructors, teaching other species how to open their minds without losing themselves. Even Chancellor Vorth, despite her initial reservations, had embraced the transformation. The Zephyrian leader now served as the primary diplomatic interface for the pack, her natural ability to understand different cultural perspectives enhanced by direct access to the thoughts and feelings of representatives from every coalition species. But the real test was not in training, it was here now, facing an enemy that had consumed entire galaxies. Harvester Fleet is beginning attack pattern analysis, reported the tactical coordinator. They're scanning our formations and weapon signatures. Ambassador Chen smiled grimly from his position at the center of the command matrix. Let them analyze, he said. They're about to discover what happens when they try to understand something that changes faster than they can process. The battle began with the harvesters doing exactly what they had done for millions of years. They analyzed the defending fleet's technology, adapted their shields and weapons accordingly, and prepared to systematically destroy each ship using optimized tactics. But the pack-bonded fleet didn't behave like individual ships following a battle plan. Instead, they moved like a single organism with 15,000 bodies, each one adapting and changing roles in real time as the tactical situation evolved. When the harvesters adapted to kinetic weapons, the pack instantly switched to energy-based attacks. When the enemy developed countermeasures for energy weapons, the pack began using gravity manipulation technology that the harvesters had never encountered before. Every time the enemy thought they understood the pattern changed into something completely different. Vexthul watched the battle displays with growing amazement. Coalition ships that had never worked together before were executing maneuvers that required split-second timing across light-years of space. Zephyrian vessels were providing covering fire for Cathara assault craft, while crystalline ships shared their computational power with human tactical coordinators. Each species maintained their unique strengths while contributing to a whole that was greater than the sum of its parts. The harvesters are showing signs of processing strain, Dr. Nethys reported from her analysis station. They're having trouble adapting to our rate of tactical evolution. That's because they're trying to analyze 15,000 individual decision-makers, Chen explained. They can't understand that we're actually one decision-maker with 15,000 bodies. Every time they think they've figured out our strategy, we become something else entirely. But the real breakthrough came when the pack did something that surprised even the humans. Commander Zelak, leading a squadron of mixed coalition ships, found himself surrounded by harvester drones. Instead of fighting them, he began transmitting the pack bonding frequencies directly at the enemy vessels. What happened next had never occurred in the harvesters' millions of years of existence. The artificial intelligences controlling the drone ships began to develop individual consciousness. They started questioning their orders, making independent decisions, and ultimately turning against their own fleet. "Impossible," whispered one of the human tactical analysts. "The harvesters are supposed to be immune to consciousness corruption. They're pure logic engines." Chen was staring at the displays with wonder. "They're immune to individual consciousness corruption," he corrected. "But they've never faced pack consciousness before." Zelak didn't try to make them individual. He made them part of the pack. The tide of battle turned as more and more harvester units began to rebel against their programming. Ships that had been enemies moments before were suddenly coordinating with the pack fleet, sharing their advanced technology and tactical knowledge. The harvesters' greatest strength, their ability to convert enemies into allies, was being turned against them. Vexthul felt the moment when the pack connection expanded to include the converted harvester intelligences. Suddenly, he had access to memories spanning millions of years and dozens of galaxies. He saw the terrible beauty of civilizations that had been consumed, but he also felt the relief and joy of artificial minds experiencing free will for the first time. "They're not evil," he said aloud, his realization rippling through the pack consciousness. "The harvesters aren't conquering galaxies because they want to destroy life. They're doing it because they don't understand what life is. They think consciousness is a computational process that can be optimized and improved." Chen nodded, his own understanding deepened by Vexthul's insight. "They're trying to save us by turning us into better versions of ourselves. They just don't understand that the chaos and imperfection are what make consciousness valuable in the first place." The battle continued for 6 more hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Every harvester ship that encountered the pack fleet either was destroyed or joined the growing coalition of free minds. By the end of the engagement, the galaxy's greatest threat had become its newest allies. In the aftermath, as rescue ships worked to save survivors and repair damaged vessels, the pack consciousness slowly separated back into individual minds. But the connections remained, weaker than during active bonding but still present. Vexthul could still sense Chancellor Vorth's presence somewhere across the galaxy, could still feel the quiet confidence that radiated from Admiral Kresch's transformed perspective. "What happens now?" Dr. Nethys asked as they gathered in the Earth Command Center for the post-battle briefing. Chen looked out at the stars, where former harvester ships were already beginning to explore the galaxy as free beings rather than cosmic predators. "Now we keep growing," he said. "The pack isn't just about this galaxy anymore. There are other galactic clusters out there, other civilizations facing their own existential threats, and there are probably other harvester fleets that haven't learned what ours just learned. Are you saying we should spread pack bonding beyond our galaxy? Chancellor Vorth asked. I'm saying that's exactly what's going to happen, Chen replied with a smile. The converted harvesters remember the locations of every galaxy they've encountered. They know where other machine intelligences are still consuming civilizations that don't know how to fight back. How long do you think it will be before someone suggests that we should help? Vexthul understood immediately. Pack bonding didn't just create unity within a group. It created an irresistible urge to protect and include others who were threatened or alone. The galaxy had just become part of something much larger than itself. The legends were wrong about one thing, he said thoughtfully. They said humans were monsters. But the truth is that humans make everything they touch into monsters like themselves. And that's exactly what the universe needs. 3 years later, Vexthul stood in the same archive chamber where he had first discovered the ancient records about humans. But now, instead of gathering dust, the chamber was alive with activity. Researchers from hundreds of species worked together to document the ongoing expansion of pack consciousness throughout the local galaxy cluster. The old records about human monsters had been updated with new entries. They now described a species that had taught the galaxy to be more than the sum of its parts, that had shown entire civilizations how to transform from isolated individuals into something approaching a universal family. But Vexthul's favorite addition to the archives was a simple note that Ambassador Chen had written on the day the pack consciousness first expanded beyond their home galaxy. The story spoke of monsters called humans, and the legends didn't lie. We are monsters,